Sir, my name is Malik. I represent Travel TV. I have two questions, sir. First is that how the Bill C-51 affects Muslim community particularly?
Well, you have to understand any law in a context. Now here's part of the context. Stephen Harper, talking about the issue of terrorism, singles out, points out Muslims. When you listen to President Obama talk about dealing with those very complex issues, he says we have to work with faith leaders and houses of worship. Mr. Harper's not that subtle. He finger points the Muslim community. He says the problems with mosques and imams. And that's what he's pointed out, and he said that in interviews as well. So you're singling someone out. You're not looking at a general problem that could come from any quarter. You're singling out one community. When he has a person who sits behind him in the House of Commons who said that Muslim women should get the hell back where they came from, Mr. Harper should have thrown him out. Instead, Mr. Harper's going to sign that man's nomination papers again. So he's endorsing what that person said. There's another conservative backbencher who said that the problem is that brown people are taking white people's jobs. Mr. Harper's going to sign his nomination papers as well. So you have to be consistent in politics, because people notice, and I notice Mr. Harper's behavior in this file. When we talk about the powers that are being given, there are more certain communities that in that context will probably have more to fear than others. Beyond that, though, anybody in Canada should be worried about their rights and freedoms, their freedom of expression. Journalists should be worried about the freedom of the press.
That's right.
These are attacks on our fundamental rights, and the NDP is the only party to have stood up in the House of Commons and fought against it. We had one over here, and then we'll come to you right after.
So, I just
Yes, well, the NDP has the same policy with me that we had with our friend Jack Layton. And it's a very balanced approach that we take on issues involving the Middle East. And we think that Canada should get back to being a very positive player on the world stage, a country that we can be proud of internationally. Mr. Harper has taken an approach that's embarrassing very often to us internationally. He attacks the United Nations, for example, politics of division. Mr. Harper has a very negative, divisive approach to politics. It's the politics of fear and division. We're the politics of hope and optimism of what we can accomplish together in Canada. And I don't like what Stephen Harper's done to our country. And I know that a lot of people across the country feel the same way. Catherine and I travel across the country constantly. And the number one thing that we hear is that people want change. So the short answer, Patrick, to your question is how have we achieved this? We've achieved it, I think, in two main ways. We've got a great team of people who are communicating clear ideas. The retirement age can be 65, not 67. $15 an hour, I'm sorry, $15 a day child care, $15 an hour federal minimum wage. Clear ideas, very concrete on the table that people react to. They also know that we can be counted on to actually do what we promised to do. And I think that we can be very proud of that as well.
So you mentioned that you have...
The Liberal Party gave them something, including large waves of immigration at the time. So sometimes that remains ingrained. But what we did in Quebec when we broke through, we started talking to cultural communities about who the NDP was, because they didn't know us very well. So we took our pilgrim's walking stick and we just went from door to door and met with people and went to every church basement, every mosque, every synagogue, talked with people and said, your community has certain values. The family. You want to make sure that it's a fairer society, that you create opportunity for your children, that they can go to university without having a huge debt. These are all ideas that are communicated more and more with people. The other thing is we can, and it's fair to point out, in a parliamentary democracy, when you're having debates, when you're having an election, it's fair to compare and contrast. And on Bill C-51, I think that a lot of members of the Muslim community looked at the NDP and said, they're the ones who are standing up for what their values are. They're against it, and they have the courage to vote against it. When someone like Mr. Trudeau says, I'm against it, but I'm too afraid to actually vote the way I feel, that's not serious. Bill C-24, taking away your citizenship, Mr. Trudeau didn't even show up for the vote. So I think that people are starting to draw their conclusions about that.
Those are the two.
Well, they're two.
There is a propaganda that if you vote NDP, the votes will be divided between Liberal and NDPs. So Conservative will win. We just want to hear a few words from you, sir.
Well, I think that the best way to avoid vote splitting is not to vote Liberal, because that's true. That could result in some problems. I also think that people should vote for the party that represents their values, their beliefs. The NDP has put clear positions on the table on child care, which is important to people, on Bill C-51, which is important to people. We're a party of principle. We're a party that can be trusted to do what we promise to do. Canadians are reacting very positively to that. They like what they're hearing from the NDP, but they also know that we are a party that can be counted on. I think that at the end of the day, people should do just that. Know that the NDP is the only party that defeats Conservatives here in Ontario. Look at the track record. In Alberta, it's the NDP that just replaced the Conservatives. We defeat Conservatives. It's the NDP that knows how to beat Conservatives, and that's what we want. We want to get rid of Stephen Harper's Conservatives, and it's only the NDP that can do that.
Thank you very much.